Oh my God, Sandra, you are so fantastic in this movie. I honestly, after saw it, needed a tank of oxygen. They
Yeah.
should have that waiting for you
It's a
outside.
little mini tank. You can take a hit when you leave.
I agree. What when you saw this and you committed to it, did it scare the hell out of you?
Yeah, I think physically I knew I could get there. I had no idea how I was going to execute what I wanted to give to Alfonso. It was someone that I'd always dreamed about working with. I just didn't know if I'd be able to step up and give him exactly what he needed because the whole environment was new. I didn't have my crutches, your tools. You didn't have people. When George was there, it was like the sunshine was there and life had walked into the room. When he left, it was like the tomb had shut again. So you just on a daily basis, you never knew if you were giving that man what he needed and deserved.
Where do you go mentally? Because here you are, you're in this box, you're by yourself for most of it. You're listening to stuff in an earwig, but it's got to make you think about being alone and helplessness and all that type of stuff.
All of it, all of those things that you don't want to have your head, tossing around. You have that time, and it's all very loud. You'd have a lot to think about. You have to dig deep. You have to use your imagination and whatever your craft is. You got to kind of use it at that point. And whatever tool is necessary to get that emotion out of out of this locked, confined space, you have to use it. It was a thing in throwing out what you knew and accepting this whole new sterile black universe is your partner. It was weird.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
You were fortunate enough to consult with Catherine Coleman, who is an astronaut, an amazing woman. Tell me a little bit about how that, I guess it was in the stars, how you guys hooked up.
My brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Is my brother-in-law, who's a foodie, who's a friend who makes wines, went to either a winery or bottle. I don't know what her brother does, but it's in the wine business. And, they started talking. He says, my sister's in space. My brother-in-law's my sister-in-law's getting ready to go to space. But I got my number to them, and we were able to have one call, because you can't just call the ISS. Apparently there's some rules. And we had one great conversation, but we were able to email back and forth, and I was able to ask questions. Alfonso was like, ask her what happens if this happens. And I just wanted to know how the body worked. I wanted to know what it did and didn't do, because there's so many things we can pretend, but the reaction and action in zero gravity is so different than in, even if I was on a wire system here on Earth, which I was, your body reacts one way. It's not the same way in space. So we had to rig it so I knew to contract instead of, flailing around, because in space the exact opposite would happen. So all those fine little details just helped us make it as authentic as possible. And it was, again, a fluke, but wine brought us together. As wine does.
Which is always good. How were you able, aside from that, just whatever she told you and kept thinking in your head, like, how did you apply it? What was the thing that was the piece of advice that she, was most important that helped you?
We didn't have those moments. We just had the physicality of it. Because what this person's going through isn't someone who's a seasoned astronaut. This isn't someone who wanted to be an astronaut. I had to physically show zero G. What was going through this woman's head is completely different than what's going through what they're experiencing. This is this woman's journey. She didn't plan on being an astronaut. She didn't care if she lived or died. She had tragedies that she brought up with her. So this was her own very personal journey.
How did you get over your own fears? Because before going into this, I know you're scared of flying. I think you had to do a little bit more than just fly.
Well, initially when we thought we were going to have to shoot 2 weeks in the Vomit Comet, which is this plane that literally in 30-second intervals plummets out of the sky, so you have 20 seconds of pure weightlessness. And we thought that that's how we would achieve that look. But in that 6 months or that year, when I spoke with him, turns out that they were able to technology was able to catch up with what was in Alfonso's head. And they just devised all these different sound stages, and we pieced it together on these machines and how we did it in these rigs, but they didn't tell me. It was actually George that told me that we weren't using the Vomit Comet like a week before we were shooting. And it turns out that they were intentionally not telling me, so I would then be very happy to do these other things. And they were right. I was like, I don't care what you have me do. I just don't want to be plummeting out of the sky in a perfectly fine working plane. Why do that to a plane?
Really?
Yeah, really. It's just fine. Just keep it horizontal and land it. That's all I want.
Exactly. Having George there, obviously, you're friends for forever. It must have been a comfort because it's just the two of you.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
He's a comfort, onset and onset and offset. He's such a professional. He knows exactly what to bring, and he brings more. He wrote a scene for us that we were struggling with, that we couldn't find the words that didn't sound melodramatic, the words that sounded organic, that fit into this film. And he just heard us struggling, and he sends Alfonso an email and says, you can throw this in the trash and do what you want with it, but I think this might be nice for Sandy to say. And Alfonso handed it to me, and I go, there's our scene. So it just, that's the guy he is. He wants to be a part of a bigger story. He doesn't care what size his part is, because you get an actor, a director, a writer, a producer. He's there on set all the time, even when he's done. The crew loves him. You just want him to be around because he brings the fun. And when he's gone, it's like somebody died.
And no pranks on this set.
Not a one. It's not appropriate. No. Not on this one.
No.
Pranks are never appropriate with me. I'm like, don't play them. I will never play them on you. I'm a prankless person.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Prankless is
not
good.
thankless.
You're
just
a fun
prankless.
person, not
fun.
prank.
I don't want to cause someone duress by, me being evil. George, however, loves it.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's George Clooney.
He's good at it.
Yeah.
He can do whatever the heck he wants. There's some scenes, Sandra, I swear to God, I don't even know how you got through it, but the stuff sitting in the cockpit when you're doing, that whole monologue when you think you're going to go and I want to know how being a mom affected you.
That was
doing
a scene
stuff
that
like
George wrote. That's a scene that he wrote for me. You have to put yourself in that ugly, horrible, sad, tragic headspace every day. And you just, I had the luxury of getting out of where I was and going home to a baby. There's so many people that have lost a child, and that's the worst thing that can happen to a human being. I don't think you ever survive. You don't recover. You function, but you lose a massive part of yourself. And to represent a human being who's literally that lost and that cut off was, I don't want to say exciting to play, but to go to that place and go, who is she now after an event like that? And how can we find a little ray of hope for her? It's not complete. It's just a ray of hope, and that's going to be massive given how far she's drifted from life. It's not a pretty place to be, but when you're conveying, that life is amazing and it's beautiful and it should be valued, even when it's mundane. I like the position that we were in storytelling here, and someone who's just letting go, someone who's just made peace with what happened. Making peace with a situation like that was a hard place to get to for us all, and George wrote it.
An amazing scene, just amazing. People like Richard Branson are saying, hey, you pay this kind of money and I'll take you to space. Is that something you would ever want to do?
No, I'd want to build something on Earth with that kind of money, and then, watch it on a nice TV with that money. But I admire those people who have that sense of adventure. I have a kid who's going to be that person. I mean, absolutely fearless. Doesn't get it from my side of the family. But I admire that sense of adventure and that fearlessness, and I'll live vicariously through him, because guaranteed he'll be somebody on that flight.
Yeah. Why was Alfonso the perfect guy to direct this film?
Because he wrote it. He knew exactly what the audience was going to see. So every day I had to check in and go, what are you going to put here? What did you want to say visually that I need to pay homage to, or that I need to honor by not doing something or adding to it? I never wanted to take away from what he was going to tell story-wise. I didn't want to chew up the scenery to, have my moment. Because Alfonso is that person who has let go and accepts what is and doesn't resist anymore.